Hello and welcome to the Soul Shaking Love podcast. I'm Valerie Green from CoachValerieGreen.com, and this podcast is dedicated to bringing you the top experts in the world and really highlighting their wisdom for how you can have that mind, body, and spirit connection, both with yourself and with your true love. And today I'm really excited to be interviewing love and relationship strategist Cyndi Olin. And we're really going to dive into how to remove those blind spots that keep you from attracting the love of your life. So, hi, Cyndi.
Hi, Valerie. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Likewise. Yeah, I really think that we both coach a lot of women who, and this podcast is mostly for women, but obviously men can benefit from the same teachings. I know that both of us coach women in the inner and outer work when a lot of my clients are, and if you're listening or watching, you could probably relate to this, where you do all the work. You set up an online profile. You might even have it professionally edited. You take great pictures. You go out in person and try to meet men. And yet, no matter how hard you try, you're still single and you don't know what's in the way. And so I would love to just ask you right off the bat, Cyndi, what are the most common blind spots that you've encountered when women are quote unquote doing all the right things, but they're still not attracting love?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's very robust too, because it could be a multitude of things. And what I would like to lead with, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. Like I think a lot of times we can really be hard on ourselves and make ourselves wrong for why isn't it working and going into comparison. Why did such and such meet, this amazing man online and, it's not working for me. Or usually, it starts within. So how
Mm-hmm.
are you speaking to yourself? How are you treating yourself through this journey? Are you nurturing yourself? Are you really showing up for you? Because part of dating is actually having your own back, um, fully and wholeheartedly, and not abandoning yourself through this process. So it can start there. Like your um, your words are wands, so your words have a lot of power. How are you speaking about the process? How are you speaking to yourself? Starts with self, but then what am I talking about? Am I saying, oh, all the men suck? Why are they so flaky? Why are they this? Are you complaining about that? Or are you speaking more into your vision of what you are open to creating from a knowing place? I know that it's a matter of time. And, something I share with my clients all the time is, basically that every experience I have is the manifestation of my beloved. And
Mm.
I'm learning and growing through each and every experience. And it's abundant, it's juicy, it's
Wow.
fun, right? Which
Absolutely.
which it can be quite a bit different than the other way of being, which I feel we hear a lot of, like, you know, and it's never what you think it is. It's not that men in your city don't want commitment, or, it's none of the outer things. You're too old, you're not the perfect weight. I could say anything at infinitum. Really, there's, so much that it isn't, but really also aligning to being the love that you want to receive in the world is such an important thing. And so that's something, our attitudes, right, and how we speak is usually a top thing that I see in someone struggling to create the kind of relationship that they do want, or having successful dating. And a lot of times too, part of the reason why dating can be so hard for people, and this can be a hard concept to grab onto, is we're really outcome focused. So let's just say you meet a guy, you go out on a few dates with him, it seems to be going great, he pulls away, and what goes through your mind? Why do they always leave me? What's wrong with me? Those words, those lines are so detrimental to really the manifestation of what it is you do want. And they can't be further from the truth. They're the biggest lies.
Exactly.
So it's really important to, like I started off with, have your own back and not be so outcome driven. So how do you do that? You
That is the $1 million question.
Yeah, so you actually date from a growth oriented capacity, or um from, yeah, like I like to call it growth dating, and you go on each date and you look at, okay, how am I showing up? How do I like the way that I showed up? Oh, okay. Yeah, I do. I really liked that I was laughing. I was, I was enjoying myself. I was talkative. What did I like about him? Oh, I really liked the fact that he felt like a gentleman. He asked if he could order for me, whatever it is, right? He took care of the lunch or the meal. And that made me feel really cared for. And then, you might go, well, there are things that maybe I didn't care for. So those are what we call desires, rather than going, oh, I don't like the fact that he wore these XYZ shoes, whatever. Or it could be anything. Oh, I have a desire for a man that, takes pride in how he dresses. I have a desire for a man that, um, is really thoughtful, right? And then when you focus on those desires, you start to see evidence of them. So
Absolutely.
it becomes so much less about, is this my man, to what what's what's overarching about this experience
Mm,
that's being created. And it also helps you to slow down. A lot of times people go really fast and furious into a relationship or a connection, and it ends up crashing and burning or leading into a situationship because, it comes from a good place of desiring to have a partner and wanting to share life with someone. That's why men do it too. And but what happens when we go really fast and furious, we start, there's blind spots. We're not taking the time to get to know somebody and say, oh gosh, will this work for me?
right. Or
Do
does he
they
have what I
really,
need, not just what I want?
yeah, do they really have the values
Hmm.
that I desire in a partner? And
Right.
is he able to provide me what I need? Just like you. So amazingly pointed out, that's a big one, because we're usually not as focused on that, but that's one of the first things I ask my clients to do. And we get together and we figure out your top 5 must-haves. Then we start to get into needs. And, needs are interesting because needs usually come from a place of something that we didn't receive, maybe as a child. Or you could go back and do an inventory on your relationships and look at, well, what are some of the things that I desired that I didn't have? And maybe that was a partner that was interested in your mission in this world and supportive of you. So that's a need of yours. Or you need someone to be nurturing. You need someone that's that you can create that wants to dive deep into conversations about a multitude of different things. And that's, maybe you have a sapiosexual need, and you
I don't know if I've
want,
ever heard that word. Do you want to expound on it?
yeah, it's basically the love of the mind, right? Like
Ooh, oh
you
my
you
gosh,
get
yes.
you get turned on by, deep conversation and, geeking out, right? Yeah, I know.
I
That's me too. Um,
totally.
so so it's like, what are some of those needs that you have? And the person, you know, as you're getting to know them, you can start to uncover, do they have the capacity to provide this? And instead of being like, oh, he's no good, right? Because sometimes we can easily go into a discard mode, especially in the world we live in. And instead of that, it's like, oh, okay, I have this need. Maybe I get to communicate it.
Hmm.
I get to open up and communicate from a love-based place that, I realize that this is a need of mine. Is that something you're able to provide? And it takes time to see if that person is really capable
Yep,
of doing it. And
exactly.
that's why you want to move slower over time. And it's easy to go into what I call fantasy. Fantasy is, Hollywood, right? He's handsome. He has all the things. He does personal development work, whatever it is, right? Like the things that really light your fire. Yet you still don't really know, are they available? Do they want what you want? And these things are important to be very upfront about.
Yep.
And like I have a vision for being in a loving partnership, and maybe you want marriage, maybe you want babies, maybe you don't, maybe you're at that next stage in your life where there's another purpose, but you want to make sure that person is aligned, because you wouldn't believe how many people go from 0 to 60 without noticing if they're aligned. And that's what starts situationships, because
Yep.
there's then an attachment grown from the connection, and it makes it harder to walk away.
Absolutely. But then you've never really discovered if he has what you need yet. But then you can't
Right?
leave because now you're attached.
Yeah. Yeah. So then it really creates more wounding
Right.
too.
Yeah,
It's,
or reinforces the existing wounds. And that's very
yeah,
unfortunate, because what we want is to, as you said, slow down so that we can really see. And I love what you said, that words are ones. That is an
Mhm.
amazing soundbite, because how we talk to ourselves is what feels familiar. And so if we're beating ourselves up, and even if it's just, what's wrong with me because he told me he wasn't available for a relationship, but then he married the next woman, there must be something wrong with me, right? Like, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
Yeah.
Um, and if right, and of course it's not wrong or bad to speak that way, because that's the same paradigm. If you beat yourself up for beating yourself up, then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy ad nauseum. And then I think what's important, like the way I teach it, and I'd love to hear how you put it, is because it's the law of attraction can seem to a lot of people like this magical thing. Like there's this, you make an order to the universe and then the computer in the sky delivers it. And it's kind of like, what? That doesn't make sense. It's really that if I'm beating myself up, that's what my body thinks is familiar. And then I'll miss the red flag if I'm in front of a guy and he's critical, because I'm used to it. And so it's about reprogramming how we treat ourselves so that the way that we want to be treated by a guy is familiar already. And then we just won't even be attracted to the guy who's the
Right.
bad boy anymore.
So good that you just said that. Yeah. So a lot of reframing, a lot of reprogramming, and having, part of the reason why I say take it slow is because of that tendency to not have blind spots around the red flags.
Right.
Maybe critical. Oh, well, that was familiar. My mom was critical, or my mom would, make me feel guilty if I didn't show up in XYZ kind of way. Well, that familiar feeling in the pit of my stomach is comfortable. So therefore, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
When what
Unfortunately.
is what does that cause and create for you? That might cause you to pretzel yourself into certain ways of being that aren't actually authentic, meaning that then you're not really creating an authentic connection. And I'm sure most of the people watching and listening are familiar with inner work, are doing their inner work. And, you know, if you find yourself in this place, it's, start there. Start with, how am I talking? And reframe. When you catch yourself, go, something that I do for my clients is, we have certain, I am statements that are embodied, and, go back to that. Something you can do if, maybe you get triggered, or there's an experience that happens that feels kind of bad, you can go use that statement and focus on it until you get to neutral or joy. Because when we're focused in on shame, um, self hatred, when we're focused in on those negative emotions, they are low in frequency. So you continue to, even if you have times where you start feeling a little bit better, usually if you notice it, there's a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, there's a cycle. It's like, oh, I start feeling a little bit better. I meet someone else. It doesn't go my way. I go back into the shaming. So you've got to, it's a daily, every moment of the day
Mm-hmm.
connection to self, and
Exactly.
connection to what you are creating.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love how you say that it's about slowing down,
Hmm.
because it's only by slowing down that I can tell, am I shaming myself for shaming myself? Because that's the downward spiral.
Right.
Or I love the way that Gabor Mate puts it with his compassionate inquiry process. And of course, all coaching is compassionate inquiry.
Yeah.
But there's different ways to ask. If you're like, why do I do that? What's wrong with me? Then that's the downward spiral. But when compassion is present, then you can actually ask yourself, hmm, I wonder why I shame myself. Where did I learn to do that? Oh, it's because that was my relationship with my father. Okay. And then we can compassionately do the inner child work to
Yeah.
reprogram that. But if you're not being compassionate with yourself, then you're not going to be able to know that, oh, there's healing possible from that. Meaning when we do the deeper inner child work, which you could also do a whole interview about,
Yeah.
that is about providing the needs for us, i.e., compassion and curiosity. And instead of beating myself up, what am I learning? How am I growing? As you said.
Yeah.
But you need to slow down in order to do that, as you're saying, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah. It's always about being curious. It's about being curious with yourself. And I love how you shared that, compassionate inquiry. Um, like, what has me doing this? And you could sometimes it's important where it comes from, sometimes it's not. It's
Right.
nice to have a relation, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But I agree.
And
You don't have to, but yeah.
yeah, and that inner child work consistently is so supportive because you're growing her up, knowing that she is safe within herself, her being, which also then creates even the permission to be boldly who you are. And the
Yep.
more boldly you are you, the easier it is to recognize those people that are in alignment with you.
Yep.
And you can enjoy the journey along the way. So the first way, the shaming tactic, which is collapsing energy, it's that holding on to lack energy into, openness, curiosity, growth, joy. It's a totally different journey because
Absolutely.
then you're just being curious, like, even if he's not your guy, you get curious around it. Oh, it's interesting you shared that. What has that?
Right. Because then you could really be yourself if you discover
Right.
that he's not your guy. Then you can really just be authentic and create an authentic connection on that date, where
Mhm.
you're learning and growing. And how do I want to show up? And am I showing up that way? Which I love what you said. Instead of asking, does he like me? Which a lot of my clients have anxious attachment, and that's the mode of operation that, I mean, and I used to have I have an earned secure attachment style, so I know what it's like to be anxious. And it's this MO of, does he like me? I have to make him like me. And then you're not, first of all, that's in your masculine energy and fear-based and low vibration, like you said. But on a deeper level, then you're not asking yourself, how do I feel? How am I showing up? And that's the only thing I have control over, is if I'm showing up in a way that's congruent with my values, with my vision, with my purpose, and then I'm approving of myself. And that's the only way then that you can tell, does he have what I need? Does he want what I want? So I love that you're talking about slowing down and asking yourself
I
those deeper
think asking
questions.
the important questions, because we're adults here, it's you get to share what your vision is. And it doesn't mean, I think a lot of times women will go, well, will he think that I'm too needy? No. In fact, a high value man wants to know what you want.
Right. Exactly.
And if he's not in alignment, he'll say, oh yeah, that sounds great for you, and right now this is where I'm at in my life.
Yep. And he'll just come out and say it if you are on the first date, because well, usually, I mean, unless he is hiding something, which if you're slowing down, then your spidey senses can also notice that.
Yeah, most men will tell you because they're not emotionally attached to you yet on a first
Right.
date,
Exactly.
um, exactly where they're at and what they want. Now, there's other nuances to that. Like, like you said, unless they're lying, rarely does a guy lie in that case unless he's, toxic and he's just playing games, unfortunately, or he really doesn't know himself.
Right.
Like there are some women that'll say, he said he wanted what I wanted and then he changed his mind. Okay, well, it means there's not an alignment, and you really, that's the power of taking it slow, having your own back, having your own heart,
Yep.
and also getting to know multiple people at once. If that's hard for you, like a lot of times highly sensitive women or more anxiously attached women can have a harder time with that. And I can appreciate that. It would be good for you, though, to
Yeah.
just date in an unattached way and start to focus on, well, what is the area I want to grow in? I
Right.
want to grow
Exactly.
in my confidence. So if you focus on that, you're not even worried about the guy.
Yep.
You're
Yeah. I mean, I love what you're saying because it's about taking the attention off of fantasizing about how wonderful he is, which feels really good. That's why we do it. He's
well,
got these wonderful qualities and it feels so good to imagine a future with him. And what's the harm in that? Well, the harm in that is then you're attached to the fantasy and then you'll be disappointed if it's not happening. And I think that's okay if we know how to deal with disappointment and then we can move on. But most people with an insecure attachment style really get ahead of themselves and start fantasizing and then fall in love with the fantasy. So then we're not seeing who's actually in front of us. And that's what you're saying, which is so brilliant, is that when you slow down, you can get curious about, okay, he said he wanted what I wanted. Let's see how he shows up, because
yes. Are his
actions speak louder
actions?
than words. Is he showing up in a way that's consistent with what he says he wants? If not, I can be curious in a positive way. So if we're used to doing that with ourselves, then it'll be easier to not make him wrong with our energy, right? When we're like, oh, I'm so curious. You say that you want a long-term relationship, and then I notice that, which is wonderful. I love your purpose and I love how good you are at your job, and I love how you talk about it, but you work 80 hours a week. So tell me, how do you see a long-term relationship fitting in with that?
Yes, exactly that. And having the honest conversations and not hiding it.
Yeah.
Or, it could be something else. It could be like, one of the things that I really admired about you from the beginning is you sharing your vision for, like relationship. And it has felt really aligned. And I noticed that um I feel really, really connected with you when I see you on our dates, and I don't hear a lot in between, which has me lose connection rather than, um, build upon something that we create on our dates. Are you, you know, would you be able to provide that piece for me? Like, would you be able to are you open to keeping in closer contact? Is this something you want?
Exactly.
And
I love.
see, yeah, and see, wait, because a lot of women will be like, yes, I did it. I had the brave, hard 2-minute conversation. And
Which is great. We're
yeah,
not
it is
knocking
great.
that. And
and you get to wait and see how he shows up. And for whatever reason, sometimes people think they want things and they don't.
Yep. Right. Like gym memberships are the best example of that.
Right. Right. Like they like the idea of it, but they're not really willing to put in the effort to build and create that. And you're worthy of that.
Yes.
There's plenty of people out there that want that and are
Yes.
going to be aligned with you. And, that particular gentleman might be thinking that he's building more with you than what you feel. So by communicating, if he knows, he could go, oh, yeah, I could provide you with that and start.
Yep. Yeah,
And
exactly. And I love the way you said it because I know your free gift is about feminine
yeah,
communication. So I want to really break down the way you said it because what you did was first you validated and appreciated him for what he's already said and done, which disarms a man's defensiveness. That's, a brilliant example of the yes and from improv, which I love to teach, as opposed to the no but, because all dating is improv. I recommend improv classes for everyone because I just
that's a
feel
good
like that
idea.
makes us have fun, right? I'm taking improv classes myself. It's a hoot. But then you talked about you really got curious. You gave such a brilliant example of curiosity because you're not making him wrong there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have probably 25 to 50 ways to say that exact same thing that will land in that capacity. And really, the framework is positive and affirming.
Yep.
Right? Like you always start with something positive. I really love how you show up on our dates. I always have such a great time. So you want to share that. You're affirming. And something I noticed, um, and I love the fact that you shared your vision, right? That's really aligned with mine. And that makes my heart sing. And something I noticed is I don't hear a lot from you in between our dates.
Right. And you're
And
just saying that matter of fact, your tone of voice and your body language are not making him wrong, even if the words are talking about what you didn't get. I think that's really important, because
so you always put in the middle, right?
yeah,
Like I
exactly.
call it like appreciation sandwich
Yes.
style, or however you want to call it, right?
Yep.
How frame it however you want. But positive, affirming. Next, the problem I have,
Yep.
then how we can solve it. Like
Yep.
it would feel really good to me if I, received text messages or I could hear your voice more often in between our dates. Would you be able to provide that for me?
Exactly. Or what do you think about that? Or do you
Or
want
what
that
do you think?
too?
Yes, you could say that
Exactly.
too. Yeah. So, what do you think? And first of all, most people don't approach it this way.
Yep.
So, he's going to be really, he's going to love it. Yeah, he's gonna be like, wow, she just asked me for something. So now I know how I can succeed with her. And men, I say this with absolute love, they need a distinct roadmap of you
Yes.
and they're begging for it, but
Exactly.
they don't always know how to ask. And they get scared, they get insecure, just like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you do that, he's going to be like, yeah. Or if he's resistant to it, you'll see that too.
Well, exactly. And that's really the only way you'll know. And I think I coach a lot of women where they're like, well, I'm scared to ask that because maybe he won't be able to give it. And it's the answer is you want to know that as soon as possible because
Yes,
you want to push away the wrong men. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
exactly. Exactly. And I feel like, there's this old program in society that says, I need to hide. I don't need to tell. That provides mystery. But realistically, there's other feminine ways, which is a whole nother conversation,
Yes.
um, that we can create that in within relationship and create that polarity. But
Yes,
men go towards something that they feel there's reciprocity around,
exactly.
right? If you're being too standoffish or too this, then he doesn't know if you're interested, and he's going to easily give up on you, especially since there's a lot of other people out there, and there's multiple ways to meet people, and you are special. So part of the way that you do stand out is setting your high value standards and boundaries for what it is you are available for and what you're not
Yes.
available for. So if you make the guy more important than your vision, you'll feel heartbroken all the time. But if you make your vision more important than any man in front of you, then you will create that vision, because you'll know, oh, okay, this isn't aligned. Maybe, I get to have a conversation. Great. If it's not aligned, then, and this is an absolute must have for me, then goodbye. I mean, like I coach men too, and I have a man I'm coaching, and he really wants to have children. And it's interesting. He's been encountering women that don't want kids. And I'm like, well, that's a deal breaker. That's like, you seem so great, and I really desire to have children. So we're not a fit, and I don't want to waste your time or mine.
Right. And
And
that's
that's,
actually generous to say.
yes, yes. And, because I feel like a lot of people have thought, well, they seem so great. I feel such great energy with them. I should just try to make it work.
Right. Which, might have been true 200 years ago.
Right.
Which is, I think, important to understand is that our bodies haven't really evolved in the past, at least 5,000 years or so. And so, maybe slightly, but our bodies think that if we're attracted to a guy, he's the only one because we live in a small town of 150 people. And, therefore it has to be him and I have to make it work. And that was true back then, but now it's not. And so our bodies haven't evolved that much. So that's what creates that feeling that I have to just make it work. And it's important, as we said, to slow down and say, why do I have that feeling? Oh, that's because my body thinks that there aren't enough men out there, because that was true when the human species was evolving.
Right.
Because, we lived in small towns of 150 people. But now we live in a world of 8 billion people.
Right.
And there is definitely going to be one man out there that has everything I need if I say no to this one. And it's really hard to do that reframing work like you're talking about unless we slow down. So I think that's the theme of this interview is how do you slow down and really see what's going on so that you don't just get caught in these blind spots and wind up in a situationship, like you said.
Yeah. And it's, we haven't even touched on this, but, it's being in a regulated state and learning to regulate your nervous system, because so many women are so career focused, very in their masculine energy, and go 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 go.
Yep.
And that in and of itself creates dysregulation. So
Exactly. Both for men and women, although men are actually more resilient to that energy because they have more testosterone, and testosterone gives one stamina. Whereas when women are go, 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 we're depleting our adrenals.
we
You know?
do. Yeah. And the I'm going to go back to the very theme of our conversation, which is, around that reframing work. So if we're in that, negative loop and we're dysregulated, it's going to be really challenging to actually see someone truly in front of you. So,
Right, because you're not present.
yeah, you're not present. You're not present to yourself. You're not present to your needs. So,
Like we're in our heads, and there's nothing wrong with being in our head if we're at work. But
right.
that's not the place that's going
Our,
to
our, yeah,
create a soul-shaking love relationship.
right. It's being in connection with yourself and your body, and knowing, like, is this person good? Can I co-regulate well with them? Because you can feel into that. But
Yep.
if you're always in your head, you're gonna be you're gonna miss it. You're gonna miss out on your real intuition
Mm-hmm.
with someone. And I teach a whole course around getting safe, feeling safe to love,
Amazing.
because
Amazing.
this is such an important piece of creating a soul shaking relationship. Like,
Yep.
that's the first step right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that that could be the topic for a whole other interview is how
Yeah.
to regulate your nervous system. Maybe you can share a few nuggets of how to do that. Or how do you know you're dysregulated? And then what's the first thing to do to start getting back to a place of self-nurturing?
Um, yes. So it's, gosh, there's so much,
I know.
but let me just, here's some ways you can tell you're dysregulated. One, you're in your head and you're in a loop, and
Yep,
you're fixated on something, and you're trying to really control the outcome of it by the fixation, which
yep,
goes into that negativity, right? And you might
absolutely.
be fearful. You might be in that fearful state. So that's a sign of dysregulation. So there's an exercise that we teach called stop. And you literally go stop. And then you look around at a couple of objects in front of you, and you start to focus on one and notice like, I've got my rose quartz. Notice how it feels. What are some of the, like, really shift your focus.
Right. To something that you're finding pleasurable in the present moment and focus on how does that make me feel?
Yes, yes, going there. And
Mm-hmm.
then you go to the next step and say, what do I desire instead of this? Oh, I desire to be in a high vibrational state. I desire joy. I desire this. Um, so I'm going to focus on that. So it is a way of reframing.
Right, exactly. And it takes discipline because
It
it's
does.
hard to shift your vibe like that. And if it's really hard, then it's more about the healing work. But what you're talking about, which I agree is always the go-to to start, is what story am I telling myself? That means I'm in my head. Focus on getting back into my body and the present moment. Then what do I want to move towards? And maybe what do I need to believe in order to move towards that? Or what do I need to visualize in order to move towards that? And how am I going to feel when I do that? And you, as you said in the beginning, you have your own back.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. And then of course it's not about beating yourself up if you can't do that. Then there's deeper healing work to do, as you I'm sure also teach. Because we can't give all the tools in one interview.
Yeah, so it's in combination. I mean, there are so many different exercises that really support, going into a different place in your brain. You could be in your dorsal state, which is really low. So we want to focus on shifting that. So some of the exercises might be geared towards someone there as opposed to someone that is in their sympathetic state. So getting, of course, back to executive state. So I call them, and we do this. I do this with my child. Like when he's out of state, we talk about green zone, blue zone, red zone,
Yeah, exactly.
and there's different resources that we utilize to get back to center, and it works.
Totally. And I love how you label them with colors because, as we said, if you beat yourself up for beating yourself up or you make yourself wrong for being negative, then it's the downward spiral. But if you're like, I'm red, what do I do to get myself to blue? What do I do to get myself to green? Then it's just solution focused.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's a sneak peek in, and that coupled with, some of the deeper inner work to connect with self, to then be able to co-create the kind of relationship that you desire. Because, I see so many times where people will go, I know what I do. I know how I'm showing up. And it's almost like a runaway train. I can't help myself. Once,
Right.
it's like, I already know. And then I do it anyway. It's so when you start to form new patterns and habits, it's natural to backslide. But when you
Yes.
have that accountability and that support to take you to that next level, then you really start to see change quickly in how
Right.
you're responding.
Exactly. And I love that you said that because so many women think, or men think, that we have to do it on our own. And of course, I mean, I do my own healing work, but I also have a therapist and I also have a coach myself, and we all need support. And so we can segue into then, how are the ways that you do support women? Are you offering coaching now, or do you have an online program? Like, how, if women really resonate with what you shared, what's the best way to
Um,
discover further?
Absolutely. Well, click the link in the free gift, and there's an option for, a one-on-one discovery call where we'll dive in and figure out like where you're at and what your next steps, what you might need to dive even deeper. So I offer one-on-one coaching as well as a group program, which is amazing. And like I said, my Safe to Love course, um, which is not evergreen. We're doing it live right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, tell us more about that, because this interview will be evergreen, meaning it'll be up
Yeah,
on, the platforms forever. But how can women find out
so
when you're doing it?
yeah, so the next class will be in January. We start and towards the end of January.
Which is
So
2024, just to date this.
2024,
Yes.
guys. And but you can, like if you want to reserve your spot now, if we talk and you feel like that's a good next step, the good news is you'll have inner work to do leading up until that. Like you're not just going to enter this course and go, okay, like you're going to get some support before we actually start the program.
Yeah, and that's kind of ideal, because if you jump into creating a profile and meeting men before doing the inner work, then it's not as efficient. So if people join before the course starts, then they can work on removing those blind spots and regulating their nervous systems and creating their vision, so that when they're ready to meet men, then they're already set up for success.
Exactly. Exactly. Yay.
Yeah, and even if the listeners or viewers don't feel ready for one-on-one or group coaching or a course, I know you have a wonderful free gift about the feminine communication that you so brilliantly demonstrated, and, which, I teach as well. And I know even after me doing this work I've been a coach for 20 years. When I'm triggered, it's still hard for me to follow my own communication tools with my own husband. And so I always am learning more about feminine communication myself, where I'm a lifelong learner. So I love that that's your free gift. So please tell us more about it.
Yes, absolutely. I always say I teach what I need the most. And
Yes.
like I can, if I'm in a triggered state and I don't show up in my light, I always have the opportunity to course correct and clean it up. And that's the
Yes.
beautiful part. We usually have second chances at that. So,
Absolutely. If it's with the right man.
absolutely. Right. Um, so really in that little package that you receive, you'll have some scripts. I know a lot of people like scripts, and it's framework to support you along the way of building that muscle of love-based feminine communication. And I even put a little feminine communication workshop in there that I
Oh,
taught that you guys can have.
amazing.
Yeah, all kinds of goodies in there. So it'll help you to actually embody it deeper and understand the whys behind it. Because sometimes if
Yes.
we don't understand the why, we start doing it and it doesn't feel authentic.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
growing.
That's a little pun there, right? If we don't know the whys, then we're not being wise.
So true. I love it.
Right. But I mean, as you said in the beginning, it's not necessary to know why do I do that from childhood or whatever, but it is necessary to know why do I have the values that I want to live my life around? Why is unconditional love important to me? And to be solution focused with our values, and really, because as John Gottman's research shows, the number one reason why couples say that they break up is because they don't have a shared vision for the future. That's at least what they say. And so if you start there with the shared vision, then that's the only way that whether he wants that too. And, not that that's the only way to avoid a situationship, like you said. But, I'll summarize the things that you've shared in this interview so far, because I think that you've really, really laid out the framework for these blind spots and how do you remove them, because it's about focusing on the vision first. And, I like to say turning your expectations into standards.
Yes.
As opposed to being like, I expect him to do that and he's a bad boyfriend if he's not. Because then
Yeah,
you're
and
over there. And instead, it's about coming back to yourself.
yeah, and when we're in that expectation place, it's really easy to make somebody else wrong if they're not showing up just right.
Yep, exactly. And their perfectionist comes out, at least mine did. And then we're not asking ourselves the questions that you said are important to ask, which is, what are my standards and is he capable of meeting them? What are my needs and does he have the ability and desire to provide them? Um,
Right.
does he really want the same things that I want in relationship? And if he says that he does, then do his actions line up with that? Which, if you're really slowing down and asking the deeper questions, you'll push away the wrong ones, which is good. And the right ones will stick around, so that's the gist of what you've said,
Exactly.
and about regulating your nervous system so that you're not stuck in beating yourself up or being anxious about what's going on with him and why didn't he call me back or why didn't he text me when he said he would. Instead, you're saying, these are my standards. I'm not giving my heart away to somebody who's not earning it.
That's right. And and then you know what that does too? It avoids the whole victim and villain
Right.
type mentality that we can easily go into. Like, you know, this isn't about somebody being wrong or you being a victim or being, no, it's very simple. Are we connected?
Right.
Does this work? Do I feel, how do I feel around this person? Do I feel good around them? It's not just about checking those boxes. It's about the embodiment of the connection. Can
Right.
really be me.
Right.
So
And if the answer is no, then we can slow down and be curious. Oh, well, what's going on that's preventing me from being me? And I have my own back. So I know that if I'm taking a risk and being authentic, then if he's the right man for me, it won't push him away. And I can speak up for myself. And so I know that your free gift is about how to speak up for yourself. And so, yeah. So, do you want to tell us more about that as well?
yeah, so it just, I give you framework around speaking your truth, asserting your boundaries and standards in a love-based way, which takes away that defensiveness, like what we spoke into earlier. And it's a really important piece. And you might go, okay, you might try it, and maybe the guy shows up defensive. Well, you also know, okay, right? Like,
It's like a pink flag, that you can then assess in
yeah,
the future.
and you can start to see is, and there's so many nuances as to why that can happen, which I just opened up another can of worms. So I explain that in that workshop too, like the inner workings of communication. It can be a little complex, but once you embody it and learn and grow with it, it really does create like magic of what it is you do.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for expounding on the free gift. I wanted to make sure that,
Yeah, yeah.
we
It's it's
really,
it's it's really like understanding the basics of love based. I like to call it love based. It is also feminine communication. Um, and why men respond so well to it too. And it's
and you said you give some scripts, which I think are wonderful because I don't look at, I give scripts too. And the way I look at it is it's not like I think you should say it a certain way, right? Because that's not authentic, but it's a template. If you see how Cyndi would say it or how Valerie would say it, then you have your own ideas about what's authentic for you. And so I love that. That's
Yeah,
part
and
of what it's
you
about.
can expand on that framework to fit your persona and make it, like you said, authentic to you. So anyway,
Yeah, exactly. So I encourage everybody who's watching or listening to check out Cyndi Olin's website. It is createyourownluckandlove.com is your main website, right?
yes, yes.
Yes. And then, yes, and then, which I love. And I will put the link to your free gift below this video and also in the show notes of the audio if you're listening to the podcast. So that way you can get on Cyndi's mailing list and get her course. I mean, her free gift, which you said does include a little video course, right? A little video training. So it sounds really valuable, and I encourage everybody to check her out if this resonates with you. And so, yeah, do you have any last thoughts that you want to inspire everyone with before we end for today?
Well, thank you again for having me. And just know that this is, the way I always see relationships is, the relationship with you, number one, is most important. And relationships are the most important area of our life. And it's, it's an evolution, and, choosing that. If you're here, I'm sure that's partially what you're doing in your life, which is awesome. And I applaud you for
Yes,
showing up. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I love how you said that it's about growth. It's all about, instead of comparing ourselves to who we want to be, because if we're putting attention on ourselves, a lot of times that's what we do. But it's about comparing ourselves to how I was yesterday. What am I learning? How am I growing? How am I loving myself and nurturing myself and having my own back, like you said. So
Yeah.
I think you've shared so many nuggets of wisdom in this interview, and I encourage everybody to, if you loved it, then listen or watch again, and like and share it if you think that other people could benefit. And then, of course, check out Cyndi's free gift about feminine, or as she said, love-based communication, because it is all about being love, and that's what it comes down to when we look back at our lives and we evaluate ourselves. Did I really love myself? Was I really approving of how I showed up? Did I have that soul shaking connection with myself? Because that's all we have control over. And then the outer reflects the inner. So I love that we really touched on all those concepts on this call. And so I'm just thrilled to present Cyndi's wonderful work to the world. And other than that, till next time.
Thanks again for having me, Valerie.
Thank you.